The toxic workplace. So I've both witnessed and been victim to more than my fair share of toxic behaviour and insidious bullying in various places, which is why I decided to make a series of videos that is both a result of those experiences and many years of research and understanding what looks like perfectly innocent behaviour which leaves victims financially broken and psychologically scarred. The cluster three, useless, is what I've named this, and by far, this for me is one of the biggest indicators that just something isn't right. It's a great big huge red flag. It's insidious and it's really demoralizing. So let's get on with it. We've got three elements in this cluster, like the others. It's left out, it's having no sense of direction, aim, or goal, um, and it's being fobbed off. Which are all horrible things to feel because they're all part of what's known as a devaluing tactic. And anything that devalues you can really psychologically put you in a bad place. So let's take a deeper look. So left out. So for me, this is the epitome of poor management and poor leadership in work. So when people are having conversations about your job role or your function or what that looks like in the future and with whom that may be, those are meetings that you need to be part of with your manager. They shouldn't be meetings that your manager is in your behalf and then coming and telling you about it in potentially a one-to-one, especially if you've asked for that one-to-one. It's just a little bit odd. It's not your manager's job to attend these meetings on your behalf as if they're your PA and then act as if you are their PA, unless that is your job function, of course. So it's just, for me, it's just weird, but I have experienced this and I thought it was weird. And I was literally taken along for the ride with something like this. And it took me a while to really see what had happened. It wasn't until I lost my job and I've gone back through everything else until I realized exactly what had happened. And again, I urge you to share your experiences below with comments, share the videos, see if anybody else wants to share the comments if it helps anybody else, because it's really, really useful. Um, and so for me, this was just a really weird experience, full stop. I thought for me, my manager at the time had poor people skills anyway. Certainly when it came to me, when it came to everybody else, they said how wonderful she was. But when it came to me, I really didn't feel that. It's not that I felt that they were a bad manager for any particular reason. I could see that they were clued up with and they had the skills of their job to a large extent in other ways and were very, very capable. But when it came to actually managing another person, there was a lot that was missing. But on reflection, when I went through that experience, I think a lot of things were done through that person and it wasn't that person's own doing. And this is why I mentioned in one of my other videos that you've got to see sometimes where these behaviours are coming from as opposed to just seeing or feeling the direct impact that someone may be having on you, because it may not be them, it may be what they feel they have to do. So they could just be what's termed a flying monkey, and you're being put in line to be another flying monkey, as it were. Again, workplaces with their different structures, different teams, and especially when they're bigger and they go across multiple sites and things can seem a lot less obvious, even though it feels a particular way. And until you're out of it, you can gain some perspective, and that perspective is gained by speaking to other people as well. So I was fortunate enough to be able to speak to someone who had their own experience in and around the same people, but from a completely different perspective. And it helped me really put in perspective what I'd been through and how much of that was potentially my responsibility and how much of that was completely and utterly out of my hand, full stop, when I was just being used more as a pawn. It's a horrible situation. But these things happen. And I didn't realize until recently just how much these things happen, and I think it's particularly poor. And it's a really good way of devaluing people whilst telling them that you value them. Again, the actions and words aren't matching up. Saying, yeah, we want you here. Your role's really good. This is what we're going to do. This is what's happening in the future. We really need you here. And then these things never happen. And this is not going to happen. And things are changing. But they're not changing the way that you're being told they're changing. So you're completely left out of the loop. And then you're being forced to go into meetings with people who you're told are in your team that you should be working with, but never actually include you in any work. Never. You ask to be included, they never include you in work. You offer to help out where you can. Nobody actually ever really takes you up on that offer except to do a bit of donkey work, which again isn't in your job description. But you'll happily do it because at least you know you're being part of the team. So when I went through this experience, we had this thing called team appreciations where we had to write down, and I felt it was a bit like a 5-year-old exercise anyway, but I didn't like it. But I did it anyway because that's what you do when you're part of the society and part of a social structure. You join the culture and you try and see what the benefits of these things are. So I was never going to sit there and call it out and say, well, this is a load of rubbish, because well, that would have been absolutely the wrong thing to do. So I didn't. I went along with it, and I did all these things. And I'm really, really glad that I did, because at the end of it, when this employment stopped for me, they were the things that I went back to on these team appreciations and the things that people had literally put about me that were able for me to evidence to myself, not to anybody else. It really mattered to enable me to evidence to myself, well, this is what I think I've done. This is what's being reflected back on the team to say that actually this is what I've done, but yet I've been accused by the person that told me that I was going to lose my job, that this is what I haven't done. So I could see where the anomaly was, or where the thing that doesn't match up was. And yes, I may have been powerless in that situation, but at least I didn't have to accept blame and responsibility that wasn't mine to accept and mess with my own head that way. Because that's a very, very horrible situation to be in. And people are left in situations like that all the time because there's no evidence. So evidence as much as you can. When something isn't feeling right, evidence as much as you can. And I was obviously made to go to meetings all the time with the rest of my team, which is absolutely fine. I had no issue with that. But I didn't need to be there. I never provided anything useful. It was like I was just sat there to be another face. I was just a member of the audience. Never felt like a member of the team. And I really had nothing to say because I wasn't including anything. So why would I have anything to say to add value to that meeting? It just felt really, really weird. But I went through the motions. I did everything that I should, and I did everything the right way, and made a point of actually following policy and procedure, and actually understanding where people were trying to use policy and procedure to fault me for things that I was doing outside of work that were nothing to do with work that they wanted to bring into because it was on a social media platform, and it was nothing to do with my job with them and everything to do with my job that wasn't with them. It was for myself. It was with Embrace Life UK. And how they thought that, well, you know what, you're implicating what's going on here. You know, most people on my LinkedIn don't even read their posts, let alone do anything else. People know that I work for myself. Most people don't know I have a job. And that's fine. It's not something I shout from the rooftops. It's not something I deny either. It just is what it is. And I didn't name anybody, didn't say anything specific, didn't mention an organisation, didn't point any fingers anywhere. But because they felt something about it, they thought they could use that as a way of throwing a rule book at me, which I was able to say, well, actually, do you know what? Your policies and procedures on social media are this, this, and this. But I didn't break any of those policies whatsoever. Didn't insinuate anything. I'm sorry that you took it the wrong way. Now that can be seen as me being manipulative, but it wasn't. That was me trying to make sense of what was going on that just didn't make sense. And again, these are the situations where people can actually make you look really, really bad when you're just trying to make sense of what's going on. It was just bizarre. So again, so this left out of conversations or meetings that should involve you, that should include you, because at some point they're talking about you either being a supportive role to another person, or your job is going to overlap with theirs, or whatever else. So these conversations and meetings should include you, but they don't. And then you're forced to be in meetings and conversations that actually have nothing to do with you. You can't provide value to, you can't really take value from, but you've got to be there anyway, like a school child in assembly on a Wednesday afternoon. It's just a little bit weird. If you feel like you've got any of these things going on, again, they just feel odd, and you're like, well, I do things all the time at work, I pointless, but they're mandatory. I feel like I've got to do them. These are cultural things, by the way. If you are in HR and watching this, these are cultural things that will affect the way people think and feel about the culture. They'll affect trust within the culture and trust within teams. If you're trying to build a workplace that facilitates well-being, then people being forced into meetings that they don't need to have and being left out of meetings that they should potentially be in is completely the opposite to what you're trying to achieve. Just throwing that out there. So let's next move on to having no direction, aim, or goal with your job. So every job should have a goal. So from cleaning to leading, there is a purpose to every function. So then it's not the function that's the problem, it's the purpose or the value that the company give to the person doing the job that becomes the problem. So if your job starts to feel meaningless, I was in a pretty good job and it felt like it should mean something to people, and there were a select few people that it did. When I left that company, I did receive some nice emails from people I had worked with that were very complimentary and said, we're sorry to see you go. It was nice to work with you in the way that we did. You were really supportive and really helpful. So it was good for me to know that I had a positive impact somewhere to some extent. But in the main, my job felt meaningless. It shouldn't have been a meaningless job. I was in learning and development. My job was there to help and support people. This is what I do. It's what I'm really, really good at. And I just wasn't being used in that function at all. I was being passed around like a pawn from pillar to post as if I just didn't matter at all. And it just really wasn't nice. And again, if you have an experience that feels something similar to that, going through an experience something similar to that, let us know below. Or even if just listening to this video or any of the videos in this toxic behaviour in the workplace series helps you, again, just let us know. It's good to know that actually what I'm doing here has actually got some value other than just me having a sounding board for my business. But yeah, every job and role should have a purpose. It should have a target and a KPI for effectiveness. So we know KPIs are your key performance indicators. Key performance indicators I used to absolutely hate. I used to hate the terms and everything around it until I really understood what they were. Now I understand what KPIs are. I think if they're used very well, they're really good to give people that sense of meaning and aim and direction and purpose in their function. And as long as they're meeting them and the KPIs say, actually, do you know what, this is working, or this isn't working and this needs tweaking here, that's what KPIs for. They're not there to catch you out. They're there to see if their system that you're following to complete your job or your function is actually serving itself, or whether that system needs to change. You need to follow a different system to be able to get done what you need to get done, or meet the demands of your work, whatever that may look like. So that's what they should be there for. There's something I've still never seen that are used particularly well, I've got to say. If you have a workplace where you see KPIs being used particularly well, please let me know. It would be interesting to see them used well, because in theory they're fantastic. They can be really fantastic things. When used under the wrong leadership, they're not. They're just elements used to, again, a bit like policies and procedures, to hide behind, throw the book at people, tell people that they're wrong, forget there's nuance there, and not take into consideration the person versus the skill. And see that actually, you know what, there's a system and a process, but that system and that process includes a human being, and that human being, that system and process has got to fit that human being, not the human being got to fit the system or the process. The skill might have to fit the system or the process, but the human being themselves. So again, there's a lot of nuance around this, where things actually just need talking about properly, and From what I've seen, there's very few people that are, or them that say they are, don't seem to be doing it particularly well. Just never been my place to say that, but here I can. So here we go. Here we are. Your purpose should be realistic and doable day to day. So not something you have to ask permission for, in case you step on somebody else's toes or offend them. Your goal is to use the KPIs like a risk assessment. So constantly check they are applicable, and if not, update them. They'll tell you what in your system of work, i.e. your daily routine, works and what doesn't. It's uncomplicated. They should be uncomplicated. They're just a guide, and yet they're made really complicated. So what does your daily routine need to achieve your daily aim? And I don't care whether you're sweeping a pavement or whether you are running a business. There's still a goal at the end of the day to your job, otherwise it just wouldn't exist. So everybody's job matters, and this is the thing we really need to start accepting with people, is that everybody's job matters. It doesn't matter what people get paid, it matters what function they do and how they're respected in that function. And that is the overall big theme of this, isn't it? It's respecting people and understanding people from a point of view that they're human beings, not robots, not a hired skill that you can separate from the human being that's behind the hired skill, because they're one and the same thing. So anyway, I digress slightly. So let's get back. So your purpose should be realistic and doable from day to day. It's not something you have to ask permission for, or you feel like you're stepping on somebody's toes for. And it should be just a way of calculating your working system. So what does your daily routine need to achieve your daily aim? The goal is to get the job done and to meet the aims with room to progress. So everybody should have a space to progress in their role, to be able to climb up to the next role, or to be able to get a promotion, or whatever that looks like. The whole point of the structure that we have around, I don't know, capitalism, whatever it is you want to call it, every job, every business, is the fact that you can progress, whether you progress with the same company or you progress by moving on into a different company. That's a personal and company thing. I'm not going to get involved in that, but there should still be room for that maneuver should exist, that function should exist. The choice then should be between you and the company in question, but it shouldn't feel like it doesn't exist at all, and that you're stuck where you are. So even if your goal around your job is to be good enough to move on to the next level, then that's fine. It's still a goal around your job. But if you haven't got even a basic goal that you can set around your job, then there's a problem, because it leaves you stuck. And no human being likes to be stuck. And finally, I'm going to finish with Fobbed off. So this is where you ask questions relating to your role. What's expected? What's to be expected in the future? Everything that's required of you in order so you can meet your goals, your aims, your purposes, whilst meeting the goals of the company and the job function and all those aims and purposes. And then you should have a tangible sense of having something meaningful to do, and not being left out on them to guess your way through the company or the manager or the leader's idea of what it is that they want doing and how they want doing it, without having anything tangible to put that against. An example I'm going to use, I was asked to do some prep ones for corporate induction process. Without being told what other prep had already been done, I was aware a lot of other prep had already been done by a lot of people, so I didn't want to step on toes, but I wasn't made aware of what or how those processes were. I was given a document that showed what was a bit of what the plan might look for in the future, but there was no context behind it. There was no I wasn't given anything as to why they come to the conclusion they had and to why that was there. So I was really just left with, oh, this is what you've come up with, but with no reason, anything behind it. I can't challenge it without looking like I'm just challenging for the sake of it. And ultimately, it's not my job to challenge people who are more senior than me in that function, especially without anything solid to challenge it or tangible to challenge it with. So basically, I was left saying that yes, you can do this, although it's already been done. We want it done better, but we want you to do it better, but we don't want you to do it better at the same time. It was a very confusing mixed message. It's almost like you've got to just wait a few weeks before we can get there. But this is what we're looking at doing long term. This is what other people are doing within that function, but you don't need to speak to them about it because we'll be just doing. And it was just a little bit all over the place. It was really, really unclear, and it was just odd. But I don't feel like I'm the only one that's experienced it like this. In fact, over the last 12 to 18 months, I definitely know that I've been kind of compelled to start doing this.